G'day, doggy fans or doggies fans. Welcome to episode 4 of the Coach's Eye. I've had to use my mobile tonight, so hopefully it comes through perfectly for you. But you get to see the portrait version of me, which is always a good thing. And I'm the dog father tonight, but I haven't got my sunglasses on. But welcome again, Lee. The doggies are out. It's out in straight sets as many 95% of the NRL fan base, commentary, and everyone else predicted. Um, look, I'll get your thoughts in a moment. There's a lot of this game which is pretty easy to sum up without excuses or anything like that. But I think that it the Dogs did everything they could to build belief. They were disappointing in a number of key areas. They were very flat at certain points. The kicking on the fourth tackle after getting that 2-point lead, whether he should have been sent off or not, was again when we handed momentum when we didn't need to. And then from then on, we just couldn't win the ruck. It pretty well sums it up. And they were able to get outside us. And they were prepared for when Burton was going to come into 6 at different times. They shut him down. They shut down our edges. They controlled our ruck. We had no space, no time. But there were some green shoots throughout the game. And I felt, once Mitch Kenny went off, we made another 3 line breaks, which shows you how important he is to their side. But look, it's glaringly obvious what the Dogs miss and what they need in order to compete at this time of year. But, that's best said after the season than during it, especially from people like the coach. But what's your thoughts on the game? Give me as much as you can, mate.
I will. First of all, my condolences to you and other Dogs fans, because I think the nature of the defeat would hurt more than anything. I don't think Doggies fans today can sit here and say and listen to this and say the boys did everything or tried everything and they just missed out, or there were 6 points or 10 points. They can't say that. It gave the impression that they weren't at the races. I think that would be too unfair. I've listened and heard Willie Mason on the Levels podcast today accuse the Bulldogs of not showing up and not trying. I don't think that's right. I actually think the team was just a little bit confused in places. I was alarmed that there was something like 30 missed tackles in the first half. This is the best defensive side in the competition not so long ago. And also, for weeks, I've been talking about a couple of things, Jeffers. Number one, they're up and in defence, and it needed to be adjusted at times because of a few problems that were glaringly obvious yesterday. But number two, something else I've been saying is that the 3 and 4 in defender often gets breached. Am I right in thinking, mate, that yesterday was the first time in a while that they didn't concede a try through that area? Because Penrith seemed to go around the Canterbury Bulldogs an awful lot. And that comes back to the ruck. And the ruck is a result of the collision. And I just think that there were so many problems in that area. And this comes back on the coach. So that's where my head is at today. And another thing I want to bring up is I thought Lockie Galvin looked better at 6, and I'd like to develop on that thought soon as well.
Yeah, well, look, in all context with Lockie Galvin, just to start, and we'll work back from there. He was the 7 yesterday. Like, he had keys to the car as such. Sexton stayed 3 out and barely made it to the other side of the field. Lockie saw a weakness in the Penrith defensive line, which they better get that sorted out against Kobe Staggs. Look, it's easy for me to sit there and say we were just beaten by the best team of the last 6 or 7 years, and we were beaten by the best 2 teams of the last 6 or 7 years. But we could have won last week. Scotty Woodward with his statistics, who provides them to Madge Maguire and he through Origin and that sort of stuff last year. He said last week's game against the Storm was the statistically the Bulldogs players put more effort into that game than any team is, and he gets the statistics to everyone because he's a bit of a freelancer in a way, although he works for Canterbury. Um, so when I actually heard him say that on Friday, I actually went, "Oh fuck!" Sorry about the swearing. Um, I I honestly believe that I'm like, yeah, we're going to be flattened out in the heat, and this Penrith side, they're going to exploit us without Critter. I was hoping there would be a miracle and he would play. They did look a little bit confused. Matt Burton at centre. You give him a preseason there and train him there. Probably in hindsight, it's what a lot of people thought would work. And he did a good job from there against the Storm, sort of put the team on his back a little bit. But he got exploited on that left edge. Young Rinikama, you know, when you can't control the ruck and your players are getting turned every which way, Penrith knew exactly what they were doing. They got the ball to the outside with really slick passing. There was probably only one pass that was questionably forward, but outside of that, they were all just perfectly done and opened up space. They won the ruck. We got no leeway in that area at all. There were some penalties from Klein, which were completely affected us a lot, but I don't think it changes a game.
Ashley
At the end of the
Klein's
day,
judgment has gone to pot, mate. Sorry to
oh,
interrupt, but I've been
yeah, yeah,
angry about this. His judgment has gone to
yeah,
pot, and I think when a batsman in cricket goes, they say that when they get to a certain age, their reaction time is a little bit slower rather than the physical elements.
yeah.
And I think his judgment has gone. I really do. If you think back the week before, the decision to penalise Canberra in the first seconds for not playing the ball properly, even though it was fine, and then the decision in and around Hudson Young with the sin bin,
Yes,
who essentially got sin
criminal.
binned, who essentially got sin binned for giving somebody a little bit of curry. So,
Yeah,
and then
unbelievable.
this week, I think the key thing was that there should have been a sin bin for Dylan Edwards. And so, yeah, I'm sorry to interject there. I
No,
just
no,
couldn't help myself because I've kept my
no.
powder dry on this. I really have. And
It was also evident in State of Origin as well. Like he was just completely um look it's funny, Scotty Pride, who we both know, he likes to get on Twitter and antagonize a little bit. He was he said some funny stuff about, the missed tackles and all this stuff about the ruck. And he said that Klein got everything right in that game. And I'm telling you now that he did make a boo-boo with that. He made a massive mistake with the penalty against Jacob Preston when we were sort of believing we could come back and people still had hope. And the second half, Penrith, they missed 32 tackles because Klein allows parity in the ruck. He allows the Bulldogs to lay as long as the Penrith team are allowed to lay. But the reason the Penrith team can lay down, and the Bulldogs need to understand this, and as fans, we need to understand on reflection that what they did to us, we did to all of the bottom eight teams for for 18 rounds, 20 rounds.
on that point,
We we
on that sorry, buddy, on
we
that
couldn't.
point,
Yeah.
sorry, can I go? Sorry.
Yeah,
Because
no.
I have to interrupt you today because I reckon you're drinking Red Bull or something, and you're going to talk for a full 30 minutes. You today, I can tell.
No,
The
no.
the collisions, right? The tackling is absolutely influenced by the defensive system. So if you're tighter together, so if you run at me and I'm close with a mate of mine, you're going to have to try and get through us too. And even if we don't tackle very well, the fact that we are closer together will make us harder to get through. Okay?
Yeah.
If my mate is standing a meter away from me, you've got a bigger gap to go to. And this is what the Dogs suffered from. yesterday. Then Penrith were getting the nose through the line all the time, and it goes back to their defensive system. Now there could be all sorts of theories as to why that's not working at the back end of the year as well as it was at the start. One of them can be the intensity argument, the amount of running they're being asked to do in games and the like. But otherwise, what Cameron Serraldo had to do was tighten the defensive spacings up and then tighten the collision and make the collisions better, use the shoulder rather than the chest. Because if you come in from wider, as the Dogs were doing yesterday, there were 2 or 3 men were trying to tackle, and some of them were left on the ground when the ball was played. And that meant that so often there was one less man in the defensive line for the Dogs all the time. And all Nathan Cleary had to work with all game was fast play the ball, fast play the ball, fast play the ball. And I have no doubt Mr. CC was saying kill the ruck and do this, do that. But the system doesn't allow it for some reason with the Dogs anymore. And I think this obsession with doing this style of defense has been partly Bulldogs' undoing. Now, the reason they kept going around the outside was because they were getting such good go forward. There was 3 men being tied up, sometimes 4, and they were just smart enough to shift. And the ball, they'd go outside. They didn't need to go through the 3 and 4 in defender. And I found it funny as well on the first try for Toto. It was tackle techniques that were the problem. The defenders, because they were coming in from wide, they ended up at the wrong side of the ball when the ball was being played. So even if they were held on, they were around the back of the player who was playing the ball. So they were on the wrong side of the ball. And then they went to the right, Penrith, Bulldogs left, and Matt Burton was just a little bit static. He didn't know whether to come up and in or up and out, and he just waited, and that's all Penrith needed. And this just continued throughout the game. There was no change in the system, and I think next year and in the off season they're going to have to work to a pattern where they do change their actual defensive formation. I know with my defense, because I'm an up and out man, but I literally have the ability with the teams. I've had the team with the teams that I've coached to say we need to get a little bit wider because they're moving the ball on us or something like that. You educate your players so that they can adapt in the middle of the game, and I don't see any adaptation to the defense. And the other thing is, their left edge had so much trouble. It was a bit similar to the Canberra right edge the week before with the Broncos, the way they were doing it. I did mention Lockie Galvin earlier. Whether he was playing 6, whether he was playing 7, whether he was playing a hybrid version of both, he did look freer. He looked happier. He looked like he was a bit like the kid again playing football.
Oh, he had a ball yesterday. He loved every second of it.
But he did overcook the short ball to Jacob Preston, and it worked more than it should. I mean, what was Ivan Cleary doing in the opposition coaching box? Because it kept happening, and Jacob Preston made, I think, 3 breaks from memory, or 2 full breaks and 1 partial break. But then Lockie Galvin kept doing that. What he needs to do, and I've got footage that I've put out on YouTube this week of the Bulldogs against Melbourne, because I've done an analysis of Melbourne's defensive tactics. Galvin is leaning towards the front man too much. And do you remember last week? Do you remember last week, MJ, we talked about getting early ball to the centres a bit more? They didn't do it. So I think all these things have been coming, and people shoot me down for it, but all year there's been that warning sign about their passive tackles because of their system. There's been the warning sign about the 3 in and the 4 in, except what they did yesterday was try and cover for that, and the problem came outside instead. So
I just to interject us a little bit and add another layer there for people to consider. How would you say the Penrith Panthers defend?
Not as clearly up and in as the Dogs do. So I think the Penrith Panthers have an ability to adapt. They do, and I can't say I've studied them as much because I've been studying the Dogs so much over the last few weeks. They do have a hybrid version of up and in, and sometimes up and out, but they are a bit more compressed than Bulldogs are. It's very clear to me that the Bulldogs' defence fans out across the field. Regardless of your defensive system, though, a lot of it depends on how you control the go forward. And the key thing about the Panthers is they will always be tight at A, B, and C defender, which are the first three defenders either side of the play the ball. And their marker system tends to shut people off there too. So, whereas the Bulldogs don't have that. So, Penrith won yesterday, in my opinion, because of their command of core skills too. You may remember in previous podcasts I've talked about how the Dogs' core skills just seem to have dropped off a little bit. And that's your fundamentals. That's your fundamentals, catching and passing the football, making tackles on both shoulders, lines of run. And I just think they've dropped off a little bit in that area. And I remember praising them over a year ago that they look so good in that area. I can't get away from the fact that Cameron Ciraldo and his staff need to have a really good look at the way they also structure their attack this off-season. So only two problems to fix this off-season, mate: attack and defense.
Yeah. Look,
Sorry, mate. I think I might. You'll be ready to go for me after I say this. The Dogs did still score 26, right? But there was a couple of occasions where they were so easy to read, and Penrith just slid and covered it so often. They've got to go on different play the balls. They need to mix things up. And the other thing that Penrith did very well yesterday was stop the Bulldogs go forward very well. So they didn't have many fast rucks to go off. Please, you go.
Yeah, well, as someone who's pretty close to, what's going on in the club, it won't be no surprise to you, but when you got a player with a syndesmosis in the game, that like Jacob Kraz the last 2 weeks has been just as much a liability as he has been an asset to the team. He's playing on pure heart and passion. Now that's a testament. We had players like Blake Wilson who could have come in, but it all come down to belief. This coaching staff are under no illusions as to what they're missing. We probably use 3 interchanges that are good, that the best sides don't need to use, which means that they're trying to make up, like, a lot of the catch stuff, a lot of where we ended up from in the defensive side of things is also a result of Penrith knowing their opposition almost as well as the opposition knew itself yesterday. Blaze, as I said, when they were in our face, sometimes I think we do persist with plays when the opposition have already got it worked out. There was plenty of plays where they were ready for Kurt Mann. They basically took the options away from Kurt Mann as a ball player yesterday. So nearly every time he got the ball, because he wasn't getting it on the advantage line, there was no go forward. As you said, they stopped it pretty much the whole game. Our back three was coming off our 10-meter line. Our forwards were just tackling. There was just no ability for us to play off the front foot. And Penrith did take the foot off the pedal a little bit. As I said, Mitch Kenny probably doesn't come off in a closer game. And he's coming back from injury as well. So they'll go up another notch with him coming back from a week. What it comes down to is if Stephen Crichton plays yesterday, if we take their best defensive player out of their team, it's a much closer contest. Now, do we win? I'm not sure. Probably not. We needed everything to go right yesterday. We needed our team did look confused. There was players out of position. I think the coach knew a long way into the season, through the injuries that we had. Um, and that's just bringing back to your points, because as I'm talking, I'm sort of thinking about your points and sort of trying to add a layer of context to it, rather than just say a turd's a turd and you can't polish it. I'd rather sort of look at it and go, these guys know exactly where they sit and where the players are at. You've been in these systems and you know that it's getting probably more confusing, or there's a lot more layers to what they're looking at now than what they were looking at 10 years ago. Whether that's helpful or not is another debate.
A bit of paralysis by analysis sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the Brian Smith effect, or even the Des Hasler effect in some ways. But what I will say is that, there's players that really shouldn't have been playing in that game yesterday. Um, that,
Well,
but the
every team will
players
have that,
trust.
though. There'll be
Yeah,
players in every team
of,
that have that.
of course, of course. We were a little bit slower. It was a little bit like watching Origin game one in a way. Watching Queensland try and basically play like the Bulldogs. Try
But
to
what Billy
catch.
Slater did though in game 2 and game 3 clearly changed their
Well,
processes, because I agree
they
with
got
you.
better. They got
I
better at
agree
it
with you.
though.
Sorry, mate. I agree with you, because I did big analysis on the Queensland defence in
Yeah.
game 1, and it was so similar. So similar. It's just that a coordinated attack wasn't trying to get through it, whereas
Yeah.
Penrith's attack is very coordinated. So
Mm.
you bob on. You are spot on making that connection. But again, I keep going back to what I've said for weeks and weeks and weeks, mate. You were having a go at me round 10 or something when I was talking about this defense, if you remember. I said this is going to be a problem, and it didn't change it. Billy Slater changed his defense and adapted, and also changed his attack a little bit. And I do think Cameron Serraldo has had a massive year in terms of learning. There's probably a little bit of hubris thrown in from him too. I know his comments yesterday to the media have. A few people have called me today and said, "What did he say? Why was he saying that? Why is he not owning this? Why is he not owning that?" I've got no comment to make on that. But I do think
I want to comment, and I can be very succinct on that. But yeah, keep going.
I do think you can't get away from this tinkering with the side. I mean, read Marnie in, read Marnie out. What was it? Toby Sexton in, Tony Sexton out, and then all of a sudden parachuted back in the finals. That has an unsettling effect. And, we can go, oh, was it Gus who said this? Was it Cameron Summerall? At the end of the day, it's Bulldogs management that have done this. Is it the Premiership that got away? No, I don't think so. I didn't think at the start of the year they were at that level. So I don't think it's a Premiership that they've got away, but they could have made a better fist of things.
Look, I don't buy into the distraction stuff. It's very easy to on the outside to say that, but when you know
Distraction.
why those, the distractions and the disruptions, there's more
Disruption.
distractions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that narrative is when you know the history of Super League and Phil Gould's role in stopping Rupert Murdoch from owning the game, and the media wars you have. You understand the context behind the lazy headline when you've worked for a company that invests more time on headline creation and flowcharting ideas than actually
But,
bringing actually investigating and finding out information from clubs. And now the fact that clubs don't.
I don't work for News Corp. I don't work for
I
News
know.
Corp, and I'm telling you,
I get
I've
that.
been around team sport. I've been around team sport all my life. I've been in a team as a player, and I've been a coach for a long time. And when you move the parts, when you don't know that some of your players are going to be there anymore, that does have an impact on a side. And it was very
Of
strange that it
course.
happened when they were at the top of the ladder. There's no getting away from
Yes.
that. Whether Buzz and his mates have, gone off on a tangent with regards to that, but they're on the money. You can't mess around. There's an old saying, mate, if it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. And
As you knew in round 10, Lee, it was broke. It wasn't going
it
to
was broke for this
sustain.
year. It was broke for this year,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean it's going to be broke for 2026, 2027, 2028.
Well, Reed Marnie was the distraction around Reed Marnie happened before a ball was kicked. And even last night, his brother is out on social media, taking the piss out of the Bulldogs. You've got, and I don't like to talk about that stuff, but if any of our, in clubs that there's codes of conduct and
Absolutely.
family members aren't allowed to talk out of turn. They're just not. It's part of the deal. And there's distractions every single club around this time of
That's
year.
right. And it's how they're managed. And it's how they're managed
Exactly. Well,
that matters. Where have you gone?
Getting fired up here.
It's how they're managed, and we just saw Michael's crotch there on the video. It's how they're managed, and I'll give you another scenario. Right, Lockie Galvin signs in the middle of the year, but doesn't come until 2026, or Lockie Galvin comes mid-season, except Toby Sexton is kept in the position that he's in and playing the role he's in, and Lockie Galvin earns his place. That could have seen a different outcome. Also, there has to be some questions. And as you know, Gus Gould doesn't take kindly to certain type of questioning, but I'm pretty convinced Gus has recruited all these players, every single one of these players. So if they've got deficiencies now, why weren't they noticed when they were signed, or why haven't they changed? So, so many issues there.
Yeah, well, look, Gus explained this 3 or 4 years ago, but when he came to the club, he made mistakes at Penrith by putting time limits on when he would be successful, and he continued that rhetoric until the end, and he's not made that mistake at the Bulldogs. And I think it really tinkered with the belief in his club about whether they could win a comp. The other part to Gus is that he said you have to be able to influence the scoreboard for a start. You have to be able to give your fans a little bit of hope. You have to be able to then get into the contest and be able to, win some games that you wouldn't have won. Then you've got to be able to slowly beat teams that have been beating you. And they've done that bit by bit. They've gone from being dominated by the Dragons for years to over the last 5 years, winning all but one game against them. They've gone from Newcastle now. Newcastle a side that beat them 66-0. The Knights haven't beaten us since. The Eels are a side that it doesn't matter what the form book is, so you can just throw that one out. We could be coming first, they could be coming last, vice versa. It's always going to be a good contest for the majority of the games. The Cronulla Sharks were a team that's just had the wood on us for the last 5 years. We've beaten them we beat them 2 times and then they beat us. And you know why? Because they've had 4 years developing this squad and no origin interruptions, obviously. And I like your piece today about Nico Hines and what he can teach Lachlan Galvin, because he's been unfairly made the scapegoat, a player who's a fullback who's had to evolve into a halfback, for example. So all these things, the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs are taking these steps bit by bit. Whether when Paul Crawley Paul Crawley wrote his article today, he wrote that 5 weeks ago. And I said, before Galvin was signed, I said, if the Bulldogs, are going to, they're punching above their weight, they're ahead of the game. We've got belief they might be able to do something at the end of the year. But whatever the drama around Galvin, what Shane Richardson did in order to galvanise his own club and did the right thing by his club.
Galvanise.
Yep. Yeah. He had to do that because he can't let that fan base see another kid with great potential leave that club. So he overvalued him. Isaac Moses knows that the kid's not $1.2 million. Nowhere near that.
I have to go in a moment.
Yeah.
As you know.
Oh, you do. But I'll let you have a finish up there, mate.
You're all right. And I always feel like I'm interrupting because of the slight delay in the thing. I'd never interrupt you, mate. You know that. Or if I would, I'd ask to. The pattern that they need to look at again is they definitely, for one reason or the other, they tailed off, right? And they tailed off last year too, a few rounds before the end. So there's something they need to look at. Again, I think it was the first podcast we did where I talked about, was it a strength and conditioning thing, blah, blah, blah. So there's plenty for them to look at in the off-season. I totally agree with you, though. A club on the up. Gus does have a bit of a track record when he tinkers a little bit with first grade. He's got a bit of questionable judgment occasionally, I think. And I know that people at Penrith, because I was at Penrith when Gus came in and sacked us all, when occasionally he did come in and do a session or something like that, some people genuinely thought he was off the pace then in terms of the game, where it had gone in terms of training methods and styles, etc. So even though his mind is perfect for the game, I think sometimes applying it in real time doesn't always work for him. He is a fantastic and the best in the business at putting a junior program together. No two ways about it. Putting a pathway program together. If lucky that Galvin didn't come this year, okay, I think the Bulldogs would have finished second or third, which they did.
We finished third. Right? We finished third. Yeah,
exactly. And I think they probably would have been a bit closer in some games, maybe, that when that's all. So it is what it is. Bulldogs and fans, you're definitely on the up. What I want to do and take the time now, mate, is first of all, thank you for inviting me on these podcasts the last few weeks. I've loved engaging with your fans on YouTube. You're becoming very much a very good friend of mine, and I hope that continues. We have spoken about doing some stuff in the off season, so we'll talk about that in due course. I just want to say as well, because of your passion and because of the passion that I have seen on your YouTube channel and whatnot, I was really hoping that the Bulldogs would win this weekend. So you're starting to rub off on me a little bit, mate. So.
Oh, thank you, Lee. Well, mate, I'm going to let you go because I know you've got a very important, phone call to make. And I just want to boomerang that back at you, mate. Thanks for coming on and giving us your expertise and your layers of context around things. And, I know a lot of our fans get a lot out of it, and they can see that you're coming from a genuine point of view.
Yeah.
And like most coaches, you're still learning yourself, as all coaches should be. So,
Never
and as I am as well. So I'm going to let you go now, but thank you so much. Go the Dogs.
Cheers, mate.
And go the Sharks. I told you about the Sharks. I told you. See you, mate.
See ya.